Going on, guys? Philly Insider here. Hunter, Drew. You know, it was looking like the Phillies were gonna play the Brewers there for like an hour,
That it
and
was.
now the Phillies are gonna play the Mets Saturday at 4 o'clock. It's gonna be an exciting series. I mean, no doubt about it. Even if the Phillies seem like they're a better team than the Mets kind of got some like voodoo magic going on right now. So I I don't really know. I don't know if I'm a little bit afraid of it or if I'm just confident. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth right
Yeah, I mean, look, on paper, the Phillies should take care of business in this series, but as we know, postseason baseball is never played on paper. As no sport is played on paper, but especially not postseason baseball. And I I'm just really nervous now, Drew. I know too many Mets fans for us to lose this series. I hate that team more than any other team I hate in sports. I like the Cowboys. I hate the Mets. I hate more. I love seeing the Mets suffer. I was loving the first part of this game tonight. I truly do hate that team. I hate their fans. I hate their players. I hate the organization. I hate everything, like top down. I cannot stand that team, and I hate how they bought their way to being a contender again a couple years ago. Which contender, they got eliminated in 3 games in San Diego, but or actually it was in New York. They lost at home in that series. So anyway, regardless, point being, like, do not lose this series because we will never live this down the rest of our lives. Like, I'm being dramatic right now, but I don't know if I can handle that emotionally. And again, like, this team has been built to go win the World Series this year. If you lose to the Dodgers or Padres in the NLCS, that sucks, and it still shouldn't happen. But at the same time, those are two very good baseball teams. You lose to the Mets, we're going to be having a lot of tough conversations this offseason that we don't want to have. And the vibe and the perspective and everything's going to shift on this team from the fan perspective. Like, it's not going to be the same as it was going into this year or the year before, right? Like, you can't lose to this team. You just can't. I mean, they just taxed their whole pitching staff this past week. Tomorrow's the only off day they've had in however many, like a week or two. They're going to end up playing like 11, 12 games in like 13 days or something like that. It's something crazy. So you have to go win game one on Saturday. And that's the tough thing is the Mets have nothing to lose right now. Like, they're playing with house money. They weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs. They weren't even supposed to have a winning record this year. The Phillies have everything to lose. They are one of the teams to beat in the playoffs this year. They have a great lineup, 1 through 9. You know, you can debate the bottom of the lineup, but it's better than some other bottom of the lineups. I mean, the two bottom of the lineups in this series were garbage. I'm sorry. Like, the Mets and Brewers really don't have a lot of depth to the lineups. And they have a great rotation, 1 through 3. We'll see what version of Ranger we get. And they have one of the best bullpens in the league. You got to win this series, man. You got to win the
now. Yep.
series. So it's a little rant to start us off here, but I really hate that we're playing them because I just hate them. But if we do get to eliminate them, that would make me ecstatic. Like, there's nothing I want more than to eliminate this team this weekend and this upcoming week.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy whenever the Mets fans come in all cocky and arrogant. They think they're gonna like crush us or something like that just because of what they got going on right now. And I'm gonna be so happy whenever we knock them out and we can run our mouths on Twitter in real life to our friends, whatever it may be, relatives. But yeah, I mean, it's an important series for the Phillies, and like in the short term and the long term, as far as how the fans view the
Yeah.
team, because the Mets kind of played us pretty good this year. I mean, I know everybody's seen it, but they've faced Taiwan Walker like 3 times this year, so
Yeah.
that's kind of like
Right.
free wins. But either way, it's still important, and they have to win this series. Really no question about it. Like you said, I mean, it would be a gigantic stain on what the Phillies have built as a team and as an organization in the last 3 or 4 years here. So it's very important that they win this.
Exactly. Yeah. And to your point too, like, that they have invested so much into player development. They've invested so much into the roster as far as money goes. Like, everything you look at, they've invested money into, and they've been patiently awaiting for their opponent now. And I think Jack Fritz did say it on High Hopes, and I kind of agree with him. Like, not that they would have relaxed if they played the Brewers. I'm not here to say that, but I do think that seeing what the Mets have done this past week and how they got in, and just the trend of teams like that, the 6 seed team in the NL that just somehow finds a way to just build upon that momentum and magic. Like, it kind of hopefully it makes them lock in a little bit more. Knowing and division rival too, that should have you lock in. They beat a division rival the past 2 years in the playoffs. Do not let the Mets do to you what you did to the Braves. Like, don't let them flip that script, because again, this team has been a poverty franchise for so long, and we want to keep it that way, right? Like we do not want to give them any hope, because then you lose to them this year, and then that's a mental thing for the next couple of years too. And things change in the division. They absolutely do, because then next year the division is healthier as well. The Mets are going to get better. Acuna on the Mets is now going to be a year removed from his rookie debut. Like, you're going to have some things working in the favor of the other teams of the division. So you want to build on this and then go into next year feeling good about your team and add to it, right? So, yeah, man. I mean, I guess we can talk a little bit about some specific matchup things too. The Mets used a lot of pitchers in this series. They did. Jose Butto threw in 2 games. Edwin Diaz threw 40 pitches again today, I think.
Yeah, he's thrown a lot of pitches in the last week. I mean, even in the last week of the season when they faced us, I think he threw like 80 pitches in 2 days or something.
Yep.
They're gonna burn him out. I really
they
got
are.
a feeling.
I mean, that's why the Braves came back in that game before the Mets eventually took the lead back again on Monday. It's because he threw 40 pitches in that game, and he had thrown 26 a day before. So,
and you can't do that. You can't do that to your bullpen guys.
You can't. And this is a guy coming off of an injury last year too, a fluke injury, but he's now pitching deep into the season a year after that injury. You would hope that would somehow work in the Phillies' favor to where he is going to feel some of that fatigue, not having pitched this deep into the season or at all last year. That's already an advantage for the Phillies. Butto, I think, is a very good reliever. I think he's their best guy in the bullpen. That's just my opinion. I think Edwin Diaz is great, but I think Butto has been their best guy. He does scare me a little bit, but to be honest, he's the only guy in that bullpen, I think, who doesn't really have a stain on their track record this year so far. Like, Stanek, I think, is pretty good. I think if you get Stanek and Butto and then lead to Diaz, they probably win that game if that's what happens in one of the games this series, which you don't want to let it get to that. But, like, obviously, we saw Phil Maton. Like, I think in a good bullpen, he's probably your 4th or 5th option, maybe 3rd. I think he's a very good relief pitcher, but that was a guy who the Phillies had discussed, or at least that the fans did for sure. But I imagine the Phillies I think they were interested. I think that was reported at one point as adding as depth to the bullpen, right? He wasn't necessarily, like, the Phillies really only needed one bullpen guy this offseason. They didn't add one, but they did at the deadline, and he wasn't thought of, like, he wasn't going to be one of their top 3 or 4 guys. So obviously we saw the other day, he is beatable. I mean, again, the Brewers took advantage of him late in that game. I think they only have one lefty. I mean, we'll see how their roster shifts as they go into a new series here, a 5-game series. But I think Danny Young is their only lefty in that pen. And they just used David Peterson tonight, too. So, like, not that he couldn't start after he didn't throw a ton tonight. But, again, that's a guy who was one of their starters this year. I wouldn't be shocked if Tyler McGill is throwing on Saturday. And if that's the case, good luck to him coming into Citizens Bank Park in Red October. I don't really fear him that much. I think he's pitched once against us this year, and again, it was small sample size. So I don't know, man. And I'm curious your thoughts, Drew. Like, that's kind of my thoughts on the pitching right now. They've taxed a lot of their guys, and they will have Severino on Saturday. But even him, like, he gives up 4 runs in that game. To me, it's really the lineup we got to worry about a little bit. But the pitching, I think, is very beatable. And again, they've used a lot of their guys now. Like, I just don't see how they can last through this whole series if it goes the distance, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of share the same thoughts with as far as their pitching being depleted and stuff. Like, it's a huge advantage for the Phillies and have not had played in the last 3 days. It just is. I mean, whether the Braves fans like to make excuses like, oh, the bye is a disadvantage, this and that, but it's an advantage because you get to line up Zach Wheeler to face whoever the Mets are going to put out there. I think it's going to be Severino.
For Saturday?
Yeah.
Well, he pitched Tuesday, so I think he would be set up to pitch on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think I saw somebody talking about it might be a bullpen game.
They might still pitch him.
It might be a bullpen game or him on short rest. I think
Yeah, could be. Either way. Yeah. I mean, either way, that should favor us if we can actually give Wheeler run support, which we unfortunately have not done many a time this year.
But my point was going to be, I mean, I feel good if Zach Wheeler's facing anybody.
Yeah.
It does not matter to me who's on the mound for the other team. Zach Wheeler's going to shut those guys down. He's going to give you a chance to win the ball game. That's just who he is. He's done it all season. He's done it since he became a Philly. It's just who he is. And I think the Phillies were saying they were probably going to pitch Nola game 2 if they faced the Mets. That's kind of the way it sounded to me. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I didn't. I heard bits and pieces of what the game two plan was. Like I heard Rob kind of hinted at Sanchez game two, but like you said, I didn't hear anything on specific matchups. So I'll take your word for it that they may pitch him game two if it's the Mets, which I could see that for sure. I would still probably want to go Nola game three just because I think Citi Field is going to be one of the better atmospheres of playoff baseball this year for sure. And I think that's tough to throw Sanchez in that situation. Ranger, I think mentally can handle it. I just don't think performance wise, he right now can handle it. We'll see what Ranger we get. But yeah, I mean, regardless, I think whatever game Nola pitches, I feel very good about it because I know they tagged him for a bunch of runs the last time they faced him, but at the same time, this is the playoffs. It's a completely different ball game now. Nola has faced the Mets 1,000 times in his career. He's seen a bunch of these guys many times in his career. Jesse Winker, obviously, we've seen him. He's been in the NL for pretty much his whole time of his career, I want to say, because I think he played Brewers. He was with the Brewers, the Reds, the Mets, and the Nationals. I think he played for the Mariners for a little bit too. But point being, he's been in the NL for most of his time.
I can't stand that guy.
Yeah, that guy's also a clown. What a loser.
Yeah. What he did at home plate after he scored tonight, like that's just go celebrate with your team. Like,
yeah,
come on, man.
Seriously, dude. All about me mentality. That's that whole team.
I hate that.
Yeah, me too. Look, Lindor's a great player. I mean, there's a reason he's the second candidate for the MVP. But obviously, he did not have a great series this past week. And again, another guy who we saw is beatable, and I don't think he's fully healthy right now either. I think that does impact him. He's not necessarily showing it a ton through his play, but I do think it's affecting him a little bit. So, and also, as far as Pete Alonso goes, you get your two righties and Wheeler and Nola on the mound. He shouldn't touch anything like that. Those guys should have those pitches breaking out of the zone. The knuckle curve should be breaking out of the zone. For Wheeler, obviously, he's got enough stuff that can break out of the zone too. Like this year he added a splitter too. So, but like make him chase. We know Pete will chase. I know he hit the home run tonight. The Brewers put themselves in a bad situation. Like you couldn't let him get up there. You couldn't let Lindor get on to start that inning either. So they kind of screwed themselves there. But yeah, I mean, as far as the pitching goes, yeah, their pitching should be taxed to an extent. Look, Quintana and Minaya looked very good in this series. I think it's fair to say, and I don't necessarily. I don't have the stats up on me, but it feels like over the past couple of years, the Phillies have not necessarily destroyed left-handed pitchers the way that I would hope they would with some of the guys in their lineup. I think Trey's going to be important for those matchups, obviously, because he's in between Schwarber and Harper. You need him to be able to dominate some of those matchups and to take advantage there. You need guys like Bohm to take it. Bohm really is going to be a big factor in the series to me. Like him and Castellanos, what version of them we get in this series is really – that could be the X factor, honestly, because we know Schwarber and Harper, it's a matter of time before they break through if they're not hitting well first. So, yeah, I mean, pitching wise, again, on paper, we should win those matchups. Even Christopher Sanchez, whether he's starting here or on the road, it's the playoffs now. Like home road splits, I get it. That is part of it, and I would rather Chris Sanchez start at home. But if they do send him up to Citi Field to start that game, there's expectations that come with that start, and he's been able to meet a lot of the expectations that have been put on his plate over the past 2 years, which no one thought he could. I mean, there was a point where there weren't really expectations for him. So he's exceeded them already, and there's more expectations now that he's one of our big time pitchers. So, yeah, again, pitching wise, like as far as our rotation goes, again, having them fresh and healthy, I think is a big factor in this series too. So, yeah, I mean, they should have the advantage there.
Yeah, I mean, if the Phillies go to if they go to Citi Field and they're tied 1-1 or even down at all, like they are in serious trouble. They need to win these advantageous matchups while the Mets are worn down, while they've used all their pitchers in the last few days. There's no excuse for the Phillies. They've had all this time off to prepare, so I just don't see a reason why they don't go to Citi Field up 2-0.
Yeah, you have to. Like you said, you cannot go back to Citi Field with it 1-1. That's a really bad situation to be in. And at that point, then you have, we're a little worried about Ranger right now with how he's pitched recently. And, if you have any thoughts on how he's going to pitch too, like feel free. I would love some encouragement on him. I just think it's going to be an aggressive, they're going to go to the bullpen fairly aggressively with him because I don't know, based off of how he's pitched and since coming back from injury, I don't think you can necessarily trust him beyond a couple innings. But point being, yeah, you have to win these two games. So if they want to put Nola out there to go, if they win game 1 and they want to put Nola out there to go just dominate and just take that second game at home, that's fine with me. Because then at the least you've secured a 5-game series where you'll be back at home with Wheeler on the mound again. So if they want to do that, like I'm not the game 2-3 starter thing isn't something I'm going to be like really upset about unless we lose game 2 in really bad fashion and it just doesn't go the way it should. So as far as
like regardless of what people think before the game, like if you want Sanchez to start, if you want Nola to start, if it goes bad, everybody's just going to point the finger and say like, "Oh, you should have started the other guy."
Right.
Exactly. There's no winning if you're Rob Thompson.
No, there's not.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're going to get both of those guys to pitch in the series. So game 2, game 3, who cares? Like if you win the series, you can line them up differently next time. It doesn't matter. So I'm not really worried about it. But I mean, you know, a lot of people.
You got to score runs.
Yeah, I mean, the offense was pretty brutal the last month of the season. So they really got to figure something out, and I hope they did during this bye.
Yeah, and we heard a couple guys hit home runs during that simulated game. We didn't get much information on it, which you wouldn't really want get information getting out on how the simulated game went outside of a couple highlights. But point being, hopefully some of those guys got right. I think Harper Castellanos hit home runs. I think there's another guy in there who hit a home run too. But
Weston Wilson.
Wilson, there we go. He may be used at some point this series. We will see. I'm curious to see what that roster will look like. I think with having you have 3 lefties in the rotation for the Mets with Peterson, Quintana, and Minaya, which is probably why they only kept the one lefty in the pen, because they'll probably use a number of those guys out of the pen. But you have 3 of those guys. You're going to need guys like Sosa to play well in this series. Weston Wilson is probably going to have an at-bat in a situation where he has runners on base. I mean, the odds of that happening are fairly high, I would say. Not that Rojas has like incredible splits versus lefties. I know it hasn't been the same this year, but I'll take that matchup for him over him facing a righty. I think that's much more favorable than a righty who has a good slider who can just get him to fish out of the zone. So I am curious to see what they do as far as center field goes against, like when Severino is on the mound. I'm curious to see if they prioritize the defense with Rojas or if they go with Marsh in center and then one of Clemens or Hayes out and left. So I don't know.
I think if it's going to be Sanchez pitching game 2, and it would probably be against Severino, right? So I think if it's Sanchez, you probably put Marsh out there because Sanchez gets a lot of ground balls versus Nola. Nola feels like he gives up a little bit more fly ball outs. So I think that could be a decision they make. I don't really know, but that would probably be what I would do. And I mean, ultimately, I trust whatever Rob's going to do because he's gotten us to this point the last 2 years. I have full faith in him. If they go out there and they put that lineup out there, like with Rojas in center against Severino, they lose. I mean, it is what it is. Live and die with it. So I'm not going to be mad about it.
Again, Rob, like people can say what they want about Rob. This is a pro Rob podcast as of right now. Subject to change depending on what happens in the playoffs. But overall, like every move he's made, even the ones I've been upset with in the moment, I've come to understand them in time. I think a lot of us have had that feeling too. Like when Ranger went out of that game, game 2 or game 1 against the Braves last year. I think a lot of us were confused at why he took him out so early. He was pitching fairly well, but you think about it, he goes through the order once, and that was a really good Braves lineup last year. And you kept them off balance with a new reliever every single inning, and that worked. So there are methods to the madness, as they say. And I do trust Rob, like you said, whatever he decides to do. I think Cody Clemens is a guy who's really important in this upcoming series. Again, another guy who I think a lot of these bench guys are going to have at-bats. At least one of them is going to have a key at-bat in this series. At least one. Maybe not all of them will, but guys like Clemens, Sosa's definitely going to play, I think, versus lefties. I think that's pretty much all but set in stone. So, yeah, I mean, as far as the pitching matchups go, again, just to go back to what we were talking about at the start, like, I don't know. The Mets used so much pitching over the past week, and they've just had so many games in a row. Like, again, other than the voodoo magic, you can't explain why they should win that series. But again, it's weird. Like they have fought back every single time they've been down, and that is what scares me. You could get up early on them, and it does not matter. Like we saw that tonight. We saw that game 1. And credit to the Brewers, most of the time they fought back too. I mean, they had their backs against the wall, and they got the momentum back late last night, and then today they got it back too for the first 7-8 innings. They had it on their side, but
Yep.
the Brewers, they are infamous for choking early in the playoffs.
Yep.
That team
They're
can't
not.
do it.
They're not a good playoff team. And
They are not. No.
it's just a consistent thing every single year. They
Yep.
don't perform in the playoffs. Pretty simple.
Yeah, and look, the pitching, obviously, they gave up some key hits and big moments, but at some point, if you're the Brewers, I get pitching and defense has been kind of their calling card, and I know Yelich was out too, so I understand that's a big factor because he's a presence in the lineup. But at the same time, I mean, again, that you just can't go through the whole playoffs with that bottom of the lineup they have. Even the top of the lineup, the way they were hitting this series, like they were not dominant enough to just go get the job done throughout. Like even if they advanced past that series, if they had won tonight, I'm sitting here talking about how I'm not scared of the Brewers at all. Like I would have felt so comfortable. The Brewers do not scare me. Like they would not have moved me if we would have played them. I think that series we might sweep them if we played them in that series. Especially they used Freddie Peralta tonight too, so they would have been screwed either way going into that series. I know Freddie, I know he didn't throw a ton tonight, but regardless, he's maybe throwing in game 2 if they win that series. Maybe game 3. I don't know.
Yeah.
If he throws in game 2, they're not going to be able to throw him the whole game, obviously. So, regardless, we aren't playing the Brewers. So that being said, I do think the one thing that encourages me is, like, again, these two teams were neck and neck for the majority of the innings in this series, and I think we're a lot better than both of these teams. I mean, I believe we took care of business pretty handily against the Brewers in the season series, if I'm not mistaken. And again, the Mets, like you said, Drew, it was 7-6. We were up in that season series, and 3 of those losses were Taiwan. Again, and in that game last Friday, like what was it, a couple Fridays ago when he pitched, we lost like 10-6, and you're sitting there watching the team hit. You're like, dude, if they don't start him in this game and they start Colby Allard, they probably win that game. That's how big of a difference it is. It's not even that Colby Allard's that good. It's that he's just that much like less worse, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but you get the point. Like he's not as terrible as Taiwan has been this year. So I don't know. Like it's more, I think our buddy Ben said it the best in our group chat. Like it really is more so the fear of having to deal with like the repercussions of losing to the Mets than it is the actual fear of losing to them. I'm very confident in the team. I'm very confident that we have a better roster. Like Jose Iglesias is starting for this team. Like I love Jose Iglesias. He's a fun player. He's a fundamentally sound player. He plays great defense and he puts the ball in play. That is not a guy who should be starting on a team that is going to make a deep run in the playoffs. Like
no.
On paper, they have them beat pretty much everywhere. Yeah, I don't know. That's a lot of another rant, but that's what I got right now.
Yeah, I kind of to speak on the Brewers lineup a little bit. Like, I know they went out and signed a big free agent this offseason, and we know who it was, Reese. But man, he had a terrible year.
He was awful.
Yeah, he's gonna be option or getting his option. He's gonna be using make whatever it is. Like, is it $20 million a year or something like that? I don't know. Either way, he's gonna be utilizing his player option this coming year. I almost guarantee it, if he has one. I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
He either had a 3-year deal with opt-outs every year or something along those lines, but he's going to be a Brewer next year because he did not do himself any favors as far as being a free agent go. And I think he might be feeling a little bit bad about not being on the Phillies right now. But I mean, everybody loves Reese, obviously. Kind of crappy to see him like that. So yeah, I mean, as far as the Mets go, I am not scared of them at all. I just have no fear of their team. They have a terrible lineup after the first like 3 or 4 hitters, so it doesn't scare me.
Yeah, and again with the rotation and the bullpen, like they should completely overmatch some of those guys, especially like Tyrone Taylor. I mean, if that guy's in the lineup, that's an automatic K. I mean, I'm sorry, that guy chased some bad pitches this past week, like awful. He's not, as far as hitting goes, he's not a major leaguer. Defense, obviously, that's why he's going to be out there if he's there, but he wasn't hitting last in that lineup. Like he was hitting like 6th and 7th, I believe. I might be speaking incorrectly here, but that's what I believe he was at certain points. Jose Iglesias has been hitting 2nd and 5th in some of these games. I mean, they haven't had like, at least the year the Phillies had that Cinderella wildcard feel, they had that lineup set. Like when they got in the playoffs, it was pretty much the same every game. And that's, to me, I think you need that. There is at a certain point with certain things where you need to adjust, but the Mets just adjusted their lineup today, and obviously they won the game. So credit to them. They made adjustments, and I'm not really sure why Pete Alonso was hitting 5 the first 2 games because, again, he's one of your best hitters. You need him to be in that lineup. But, again, if you get through Lindor and Nimmo, I mean, again, you can give Pete a free pass. I think they can get him out. I don't think they need to, but you should be afforded that opportunity if you can get through the first couple guys. Jesse Winker, that should be another guy who you should be able to get out. I get, righty lefty, he should have some matchups where he could potentially do something, but lefty. I mean, that guy, that he's not going to be up to bat. They're going to pinch hit for him. If he is up to bat, good night. That's an easy automatic out. So
I think
there are plenty of favorable matchups.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And even if it's Nola and Wheeler against Winker, I'm not scared of that at all. I do not care. But I saw somebody tweet out, like, I can't wait to watch Matt Strahm strike out Jesse Winker to end the NLDS. That'd be great. But either way, yeah. I mean, the Mets, they're not a scary team. They're just not. They just have some kind of crazy momentum going right now. And I think the Phillies' top 2 pitchers are going to be putting a stop to that pretty steadily.
Yeah. And Mark Vientos, too. That guy was in the 2-hole tonight. Was the pitcher crazy. For – I'm completely forgetting. Did the Brewers throw a lefty to start the game? No, they threw a righty. It was Tobias Myers. So they have Vientos hitting second. He goes 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, which I think you can – like, that's – he has a lot of weaknesses as far as chasing pitches go. And, yeah, shout out the Tigers. I'm very hype on the Tigers now. Yeah. Detroit is up right now with the Lions and the Tigers. It's a good time to be a Lions fan. So shout out
Tigers are kind of scary. Tarek Skubal is a very good pitcher, so
yeah,
he can carry a staff.
They've been saying it on the broadcast, like they may not have the flashiest roster, but they play matchups and they win games. Like it's a very that's AJ Hinch has done an incredible job with that team down the stretch, and like you said, I don't know who let the Tigers get hot. Whatever he said, I'm not going to try to do it again. But again, like looking at, this Mets lineup, Starling Marte, another guy who should be an auto out in certain situations. Harrison Bader, I beg to see him up to bat in this series coming up. Like I would love to see Harrison Bader. He's going to be a late game defensive replacement to me, most likely. Yeah. Alvarez is a really good 9 hitter. I'm not really sure why they have him hitting 9, but I guess turn it over to the top of the order, you are going to get chances there. So that is a guy you got to be careful with. I do fear him a little bit, but again, it's like
Nimmo, all or nothing though.
Yeah, he's a home run or bust, pretty much. You're right.
Yeah.
So
not very scary most of the time, but if he's in a big spot with runners on base, able to take the lead, might be a little bit scary because he just swings for the fences every single time.
Yeah, and ideally with that bottom of the order, he's not going to get many RBI opportunities, which again makes it odd. But a guy who could turn it over to the top of the order, so we will see. It really is, to me, if you can get Lindor, Nimmo, Alonso, and Alvarez out, like I don't see where the run opportunities come from for them. I just don't. Other than luck, which does happen in baseball, it's unfortunately that voodoo magic can be real. But yeah, like Jose Iglesias, again, a guy who is a very fundamentally sound player, and he'll put the ball in play. He'll hit with 2 strikes. Like he didn't strike out at all tonight, even though he went 0 for 4. But you can neutralize him pretty easily. Like that's not a guy who is going to do a ton of damage if you have the right guys on the mound. And again, after all these guys, we talked about our rotation a good bit. Look at this bullpen. You have Kerkering, who I think Kerkering is very built to face some of these Mets hitters. I don't think they're prepared to face that sweeper in a postseason environment. You have Jeff Hoffman, I'm hoping he's going to be that guy. He's going to be that reliever that just runs through a whole conference in terms of the National League. Like he needs to be that guy this postseason. You have Carlos Estevez, who things will probably get a little shaky with him. So you need to have him in the right situations, but absolutely think he can get the job done if called upon. Matt Strahm, absolutely electric. I mean, that guy is up for an all-MLB selection this year along with Hoffman. Matt Strahm is awesome. And Alvarado will be, again, Alvarado's another wild card like Estevez. I trust Estevez a little more than Alvarado at this point, we've seen him pitch more back in the back end of the year. And even though it's been dicey, Estevez has mostly gotten the job done. But Alvarado is still really good. And I think I know he took time off for family. So again, that's personal situation. Hope everything's well with that. And that I'm sure that impacted his performance a little bit too. But Also, on that note, like hopefully some of that time off also keeps him a little more fresh going into this postseason too. I think he got overused a little bit at the start of the year this year and the past couple postseasons as well. So you have a lot of depth back there. I think the bullpen is very fit for the series.
Yeah, I mean, the Phillies pretty simply just have one of the best bullpens left in the postseason.
Yes.
Probably the best at this point. The
Yeah.
Brewers had a pretty nasty bullpen.
Yeah.
So I'll
Also,
definitely
the
give them
Padres
that.
probably.
Padres, yes, Padres also have a very good bullpen. The
Yeah.
Dodgers don't really have a great bullpen, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah. I really don't fear the Dodgers if we do make it out of this round, to be honest. But that's a
No.
cross that bridge when we get there problem.
Yeah. I mean, Matt Strom owns Ohtani, so
Yeah. Correct.
that was crazy whenever he struck him out back in
Yeah.
August or whatever that was. That was nuts.
Top moment
Anyway,
of the year.
yeah, I was there for that actually.
Were you really? Wow.
Yeah. Yep, it was
That is
electric. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the series though, definitely.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Anytime division rivals play in the postseason, which coincidentally both sides of the bracket right now, that's how it's working out.
Yes. Yes.
Bitter division rivals playing on both sides of the bracket. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
you don't see that every day. But
Yeah.
exciting. Whether you're a Phillies fan, Mets fan, a Diamondbacks fan, who cares? You know, like it's good baseball. So.
I'm sure Major League Baseball is very happy about how the way this shook out. I mean, you have four big baseball markets right now. I mean, Petco Park has been loud this past week.
Yeah.
And shout out the Braves. You know, they thought the wild card would help them get some rhythm this year, and they complained about having to buy the past 2 seasons. And unfortunately, what a surprise. The Braves still choked in the first round.
Yeah, shocker. Huh?
Granted, I know they're not healthy, but point being, I don't know if that would have really solved any of their problems. The Padres are a great team, and they barely got in on Monday. I mean, they're lucky they won that second game again. I mean, Joey Lucchesi almost pulled something out of his hat there and sent them home on Monday night. So
yeah, I mean, maybe the Braves will stop down in Texas and pick up the Astros and all head to Cancun together.
Yeah,
bunch of bums, get out of here.
Yordan Alvarez and Marcelo Ozuna fighting for the last floaty in the pool, right? That was whatever that was you sent.
Yeah, it was something like that. But yeah, I'm so glad those guys are out. I can't stand the Braves. I can't stand the Braves almost as much as I can't stand the Mets.
Yeah. The Braves fans really are what make it miserable. I mean, they're still like that World Series trophy they got a couple years ago feels more and more like a fluke. It really does. Like they have not really.
They don't show up in the postseason.
No, they don't.
They just don't.
That's the last postseason series they won. So yeah, love to see them going home packing. But yeah, man, I mean, this is going to be must watch TV for sure with these two markets, and I do think the Mets will be in a number of these games in this series at the least. And if they're in the game, obviously, as we saw, they can win those games and they can definitely come back from deficits. I mean, again, they're playing with house money. When they go down, they're not really worried at all. And you can tell that's the mentality of the team right now, too. So you have to credit them. They've had a really impressive past week. The fact that they got in there off that doubleheader the way they did on Monday, the fact that they won the series the way they did when it looked almost, I mean, it was, I think everyone thought it was over. I think they thought the momentum had completely shifted in the series. When Alonso got up, I got very nervous. But up until that inning, I think everyone said Devin Williams is coming in. This game's over. I mean, that was pretty much what was expected. Devin Williams is as close to lights out as you get. I mean, he's one of the best closers in the game for sure. And it just didn't happen tonight for him. So surprising we're sitting here talking about this, Drew. I really am. And I do think just having the rest, I mean, again, you saw what happened. Having that doubleheader on Monday could really affect the Mets going into the series just with usage of certain guys. And there's no reason. I mean, look, you should win both home games. There is no reason you should lose game one. If you lose game one, you are in a terrible spot going into the rest of the series. So you have to win Saturday. Like there is no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to win Saturday. And we'll get to Sunday when we get there, but go take care of business Sunday too. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think like the guys are feeling the pressure of it? Like how do you think they are as a locker room right now?
I don't think they're scared of anybody. And I think they just have one of the best mentalities you could ever have. Just, if you're coming into our house, good luck. There's just no advantage to coming into CBP in Red October.
Yeah.
It's one of the hardest things to do in probably all sports as far as playoff environments go.
Yeah, definitely. No, 100%. And I think that's the one plus is like, you got to remember that these guys aren't from Philadelphia. So like as much as I would love them, I think they do feel the rivalry for sure. I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
but
Oh yeah, definitely.
I also don't think it's to the point where like me as a fan, I'm like, like I'm gonna have to deal with Mets fans the rest of my life if we lose this series. Like it's not to that point where they start worrying about that. I'm sure they feel the weight of it, like to an extent. I think you saw this year, but I think that's been like I think the whole year. The way that Bryce has acted, like I'm not saying this in a bad way, but like that game, I think it was the Giants series where he exited and he was very frustrated after a strikeout. Like that's happened a lot this year. You've seen this whole year. Bryce wants a ring really bad. I mean, he's always wanted it, but I think this year he's a different level of locked in. And I'm not saying he's going to go into the series and hit 1,000 and just have a clutch hit every single situation that comes up. But I think that translates to, I think it's contagious with the rest of the locker room too, and I think they feel it. But they also still stay loose at the same time too, which is why we love this team, is because they don't really like back down or get scared, or like last year their bats just went cold. It wasn't any sort of mentality thing. I don't think it was just their bats went cold at the worst time possible, and they blew those first 2 games in Arizona. I mean, that was where they really lost the series, even though they won Game 5. I know they bounced back, but you should have probably won it in 5. So point being, I think mentality wise, I do think they will be ready. But we will see on Saturday. That'll be the real test. And I think this city, like not having played in the wild card this past week, like the city's been at those games these past few years. Like I think that like as much as they were ready to erupt after the playoff drought ended, I think they've had enough of not playing this past week and hearing all the Mets fans. Like there will be Mets fans there, obviously, but I think the stadium and the city is ready to erupt on Saturday afternoon. I think they're really eager to get into that ballpark, and I think there's going to be a lot of electricity flowing once those gates open, even before they do too. It's always a fun atmosphere down there before the playoff games. So
yeah, I mean it's one of the most electric environments there is. So it's definitely going to be exciting. I mean, you can feel it through the TV whenever you watch it. So
yeah, it's a special thing.
It's a rare thing. Yeah, it's fun.
It is.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything else I want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I'd love to talk about the rest of the playoffs too.
I'm down.
There's been a lot of fun stuff going on. So we talked about the Tigers a little bit, which was really exciting. I wanted them and the Royals to win, so I was very happy this past week. They were the two fun teams out of the AL matchups for sure. No offense to the Orioles, like I do feel bad for Baltimore fans because they just got good again and now they still can't figure it out. So
yeah, I mean, I don't really think I feel bad for them because they got a little too cocky, a little too fast.
They did. They
really haven't proven anything, and you're talking about how good.
Yeah,
regular season does not matter once October starts. So
yeah,
I think they learned a valuable lesson.
They did. Their fans have talked a lot about Phillies Orioles World Series. Like they talk about that a lot. So I would agree with that, but. As far as the team goes, they have a lot of likable guys. So, and I do like that. I like when that stadium is loud too. So it's been unfortunate to see the way it panned out. Love Eflin too. I still miss Eflin to an extent. I know he's not always healthy, but and he pitched well. I mean, him and Burns did their jobs in that series. Like, the Royals again. Like I feel like we're watching 2015 again, where they're playing small ball and just finding ways to win games. And Reagan's is so fun to watch. Like I don't want to skip ahead to the ALCS, but. If the Tigers and Royals were to advance, him and Skubal on the mound, oh my gosh, that would be
pound the under on that one.
Yeah.
If the over under is like 4 runs, I'm taking the under. No way.
If it's 2 runs, I might still.
Those are two of the best lefties in the sport.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's really exciting to see 2 young lefties like that just on the come up. And sure, like a Yankees Guardians rematch, I would love to see that too. I don't like the Yankees. I would love if they got eliminated, but. Seeing a rematch of that from a couple years ago would be great as well. But I don't know, like those are probably 2 better markets. You probably want the New York market in the ALCS, but I would rather see the 2 aces on the mound. And I think Detroit will get up for that series. I think Kansas City will have a good environment too.
And what are the matchups in the AL?
So it is Tigers, Guardians, and then it is Yankees, Royals. So I like both those matchups.
Yeah, Yankees, Royals will be a fun series, I feel like.
Yeah,
that could be crazy.
Yep, absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see what Juan Soto does after this season. I'm curious to see if he goes back to New York or not. I mean, he's had his best year of his career probably there this year, I would assume. I don't know his numbers exactly, but I know he went ludicrous this year for sure.
Yeah.
Judge is obviously the best hitter in baseball. Probably. I mean, you could say him or Otani probably.
Mhm.
Judge was just kind of on another level this year.
Yeah. And Chisholm was big for them when he first got traded there. The injury happened, but um, having him to back those guys up in that lineup, that's important because the rest of the lineup has really not been great for them this year. So having a guy like that is really important. I'm curious to see what the Yankees do pitching wise too. I imagine Rodon will probably go in game 2 of that series, but the Royals have overall they have a great rotation. I know they have Waka who they can throw. I would imagine if there's another, I'm completely blanking right now on their fourth guy. Obviously, they have Lugo as the number 2 behind Reagan's right now, but
Yeah.
they have a fourth guy who I'm completely forgetting right now. Brady
Yeah.
Singer. Brady Singer's solid. Like he's a good number
Yeah.
4. I think. I would imagine you probably go Waka in game 1 of that series. I think, and again, he's pitching the postseason in big spots. I believe he was a big postseason player for the Red Sox or the Cardinals a number of years ago.
Yeah.
So you have him going to game 1, and then you can put Reagan's on the mound game 2 and Lugo game 3. I mean, the Royals could legitimately jump out to a lead in that series. They have the pieces to do it.
Yeah, absolutely they do. And obviously, it's going to be tough game 1 going against Garrett Cole, but
Sure.
it's never easy facing a guy like that. And,
No.
I mean, if there's any team that has that kind of magic in the AL right now, it's either Royals or the Tigers. So uh, definitely a good matchup for the Royals. I think
Sure.
they're red hot. So
Yeah.
anytime you can win the wild card and come into a series with when you sweep the wild card, it just feels so good. I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's part of the reason that Atlanta fans have been mad at the last couple of years. But I mean, it's at the end of the day, you still got to go into the other team's ballpark to start it, and you have to win games. That's just what you
Yep.
got to do.
Yeah, and both of them did that. And that's one thing about the Mets too is like if they had won on Wednesday night, I definitely would have been a little more worried. But even after Wednesday night, I was like, look, I still would rather play the Brewers. But the fact that they had to go to a third game benefits the Phillies tremendously. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
huge advantage for us. And as much as the Mets do have that magic feel to them, it did simmer off a little bit. Like it got stopped a little bit in that second game. So obviously there is potential for I think someone tweeted out they're fighting between being the team of destiny and being the Mets. That is
yeah,
that is a real internal battle going on for them right now. So
yep.
we will see what version of them we get on Saturday and Sunday at Citizens Bank. I'm sure Citi Field is going to be rocking for sure. First home game there. Well, they had the wild card series in 2021. It was loud, but first time I think they feel much more hopeful in a while too. Like obviously they had hope in 2021, but this team has a little bit of a different feel around them because it's not just we paid our way to get here. It's we're paying guys on other teams who we had to trade away, and we're trying to make it here with kind of this makeshift roster that was put together with a bunch of guys like who were take a chance type of players, but like a lot of them worked out. Like Severino, Manaea really worked out well for them. Severino was a real take a chance because he had so many injuries and he stayed healthy this year. But that's a guy like I hope he pitches in Citizens Bank Park. If they save him for Game 3, which I imagine they wouldn't, because you'd want him available to pitch out of the pen in a Game 5 if it came to that. But I hope he pitches in CBP because I just think he's a guy like you saw it with the Yankees. He can get easily rattled. And it even happened a little bit in Milwaukee. And Milwaukee's not nearly the environment that it is in Philadelphia. So I would love it if he came into Philadelphia and tried to start that game because I think advantage Philadelphia crowd. I really do. But I forget how we got back on the Mets. We were talking about the AL or the sweeping the wild card series. But no, I mean, the Astros too, seeing them get eliminated was freaking awesome. I mean,
Poetic, yeah.
The fact that they lost in 2 games too is awesome, and it feels a little bit like I'm not going to say they're done for the year. Like I think they're still going to be in the playoffs every year, but felt a little bit like the ending.
The reign is kind of coming to an end.
Yeah,
feels like within the next couple of years, it's probably going to be like the Rangers winning that division, something like that. I feel like the Rangers had a lot of misfortune this year.
they did. They were
It kind of sucks. Yeah, it kind of sucks to see the World Series champion not be in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
But, they were kind of like how the heck did they get here last year whenever they got into the World Series? But hey, that's kind of what it takes, obviously.
Yeah.
From us in 2022. Get hot at the right time and go in and win it. Obviously, we ran into the Astros, and they were a very, very, very good team at that point. So it just is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, poetic. It was awesome to see them go down the way they did. And Jackson Chourio was 12 years old, I think, the last time the Astros were not in the ALCS. So that tells you just how dominant they have been. Obviously, they had some help along the way from, some trash.
They played in a bad division for a long time.
They did that too. Yeah, Seattle wasn't relevant for a little bit. Texas was struggling for some time. The Angels are. I mean, that goes without saying. That doesn't need an explanation.
Yeah.
And who's the fifth team in that division?
Mariners, Rangers, Astros, A's.
A's. Yeah, well, that also. I mean, the A's had their years, but they were never better than a wild card team. So,
No,
which is
yeah,
weird. I mean, you look back at some of those A's rosters, they had opportunities. Which again sucks with the recent turn of events with them going to Vegas now. But yeah. Point being that, like you said, division was very light for a number of years there. So yeah, man. I mean, that was cool. Even Framber. I mean, Framber's been an excellent postseason pitcher. He's been an excellent pitcher. I mean, he is an excellent pitcher. That doesn't like what happened the other day doesn't change my view on him. And again, he wasn't on the cheating team, so I don't really have as much. I don't know. I don't want to say hatred. I know I said I hate everyone on the Mets, but like hate's a strong word. But point being, like, I don't really have as much dislike for him as I do some of the other players. So, and even that most of them are off the team now. So
yeah. Speaking of guys that had bad outings the other day, how about Max Fried? What a disaster, man! I hate that guy, and I'm so glad he sucked. Hate's a strong word, but I hate that guy. Like everybody talks him up like he's so good, and then he chokes in the postseason every single year.
Yeah, he got rocked.
Yeah,
that wasn't
such a bum.
Yeah. And the Braves made it feel like it was close in that game by making it 5-4. It never felt close. I mean, that had the feel that going into that series, I was not worried about the Braves winning that series. And even if they did, fine. You took out the Padres for us, go try to beat the Dodgers in a series. And if you get past them, I would love to see you if we both get to the NLCS. Like this was the first year, like the last couple of years, I was very scared because I didn't want to lose to them and deal with the fans. So that was part of it. But last year, I felt like we did have some magic. So after beating them the year before, I felt like we did have a shot to beat the Braves last year. And I felt pretty good going into that series. But like this year coming into the playoffs, like even if their guys were healthy, they just didn't have the feel of a team that really could make a deep run. Especially once Sale went down, that team was done. I mean, they knew, even if they won on Monday night, which they did, like at that point, you knew he wasn't going to pitch in the wild card series. They're not going to make it any further. Ronaldo Lopez wasn't healthy down the stretch either. That happens when you put a guy in the rotation who was in the bullpen before, which he was great this year. But again, like you said at the start of the year, Drew, they had a great rotation, but they didn't have the depth to prepare. I mean, Smith-Shawver had to start game one.
Yeah, I mean, go back and clip it. I literally said that in
a lot of
first pods of the year.
And through a lot of pods too.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have any depth anywhere on the roster.
No.
If anybody gets hurt, they're just done because there's a black hole in their lineup. Then they had a bunch of injuries this year. They were very, very poor for a lot of the year. I mean, they kind of got some like magic from these guys that are not good baseball players that they picked up off waivers and this and that. Like every time they bring Jorge Soler back, he plays good for them. And then, like they were starting Ramon Laureano in center field. Like let's get a grip. Let's get a grip here. Like come on.
And even crazier that against the Mets, he went 3 for 3 with a home run in that game on Monday too. That's even more wild. I mean, look, great arm, especially when he's using PEDs, but that guy, I mean, he couldn't like that guy. He needs a beach ball to be thrown at him for him to make any contact. If it's postseason baseball, good luck to Ramon Laureano. Like granted, was he a guy I wanted a couple years ago? Yeah, because our center field situation sucked. But I recognize that guy. Like if he hits the baseball, it's going to go a long way. But very rarely does he hit the baseball, and when it's an actually good pitching matchup. So, it's a great point. And Gio Urshela and Whit Merrifield at the bottom of that lineup. What are we doing?
Did Whit Merrifield even play in that series?
No, I don't even think he touched the field. Maybe I'm wrong. I really didn't watch that series to be quite honest, but I know he didn't. I don't think he even played Monday in the doubleheader, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Ramon Laureano peaked, and he'll never reach that again. I can almost guarantee you that. Like they need to let that guy walk if they care about their future. Like that'll be a disaster if they bring him back and expect him to contribute like next year. And
tells you how bad the situation was that they were relying on him.
Yeah.
The 5 or 6 spot of that lineup too?
Yeah. Crazy stuff. Yeah. I mean, Travis d'Arnaud seems like he has a big hit against us every time we play them. But still, I mean, he's not scary. And Sean Murphy sucks, like everybody kind of figured.
Yeah.
Like he was awful this year. Just nothing short of it, really.
Yeah. Again, like you said, Max Fried, very beatable in a postseason series.
Oh
He's
yeah,
a very good pitcher. I mean, he is. There's no doubt about it. But
he's a
teams
regular
don't.
season merchant
He's
though.
a regular season merchant for sure.
Yep, kind of
I
like the
like
whole Braves team is. Like
that.
they get into the postseason with 100 wins and they can't
Yeah,
even touch on anybody.
yeah. Matt Olson too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't like. Yeah, I know he hasn't been a Brave that long. Just annoying. I mean,
yeah,
it's he just bothers me, and I love that he hasn't really. And again, they've lost other guys obviously this year, but like he's the guy in the middle of that lineup.
yeah,
You didn't lose the guy who was. I know Cunha is really the guy in that lineup, but like he's still the heart of the order right there with Olson. So
yep,
obviously things changed when they lost Riley and Albies went out for a time and Harris missed some time. Like I know they had injuries this year, but again, I don't think they're not getting back to the World Series with that team, in my opinion. I
right,
just don't see it happening. They have a great
yeah,
organization, but they just can't do what it takes to go all the way. So
yeah. I mean, obviously they won in 2021, but that's a couple years ago at this point. Like we got to kind of move on from that a little bit. Like I know it's nice to win World Series, but at what cost? Like they haven't done anything since. So
no, no, they haven't. And yeah, like again, they things really fell into place for them that year. I'm not saying they didn't earn it. They earned that World Series for sure. That's a valid ring. Like I won't tell them that on Twitter, but um, you know, like obviously they won the World Series. There's no denying that. But all those trades they made at that deadline worked out like to perfection. I mean, Jock Peterson had big hit after big hit. Jorge Soler ends up being it's like Steve Pierce with the 18 Red Sox. Like Jorge, I'm not saying Jorge Soler is worse than Steve Pierce or the same. Like Jorge Soler is obviously carved out a good career for himself, but like unlikely hero becomes World Series MVP. They had other trades that year that I'm forgetting too. Like did they? I think they traded for Eddie Rosario that year, if I'm not mistaken. And he played well down the stretch of that year. Like he was. It's weird. We were sitting here in like January, Drew, talking about him as like, did we pick him up as a platoon option in left field?
thank
And
goodness we didn't.
yeah, thank goodness we did not. We were just talking about guys at that point, but he ends up in DC and doesn't really do much. I don't even think he lasted in DC this year. I think he ended up back with Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah, I think he did at one
um,
point.
yeah, I don't think he lasted there either. But point being, like they got guys right when the time was right, and
Yeah,
sometimes that happens. So I don't know. Hopefully that's us with Estevez this year. I really do like I like him a lot. I know he's been shaky, but he was a guy you did a video on at the deadline, Drew, and he was a very possible target for that whole month of July. And we looked at him. I'm saying that because a lot of us we looked into him a lot, especially you,
yeah,
Drew. And like again, I know he's not perfect, but I do think he's another guy he's a real key to this bullpen, and he just has a fire too. Like I think he fits in with this clubhouse, man. Like I don't know him as a person, but it feels like just the way the energy he has on the field and the way he interacts with the guys, from what I've seen, he feels like a guy who fits here. And I really do want to see him just have a big postseason because we've had so many trade deadline acquisitions that just haven't really panned out very well by the end of the year. So Dombrowski hasn't had the most success with trades per se, but I would love to see. He's a guy I really want to see. We'll dive deeper into that as the postseason goes on. But yeah, no, I just wanted to talk about the wild card round a little bit. It was very, very, very exciting from every game. That second Tigers Astros game was electric. Even look, I hate the Mets and the Braves, but that doubleheader, the first game of the doubleheader, was unbelievable on Monday. Like we've seen a lot of good baseball this week, and it's been a treat. It's been so fun to watch. It's really cool to see playoff baseball the way it is. Some environments haven't been as electric as others, but there's still been a lot of really like big postseason moments that you're going to see in those compilations for years to come of, clutch postseason hits or whatever it may be. So Andy Ibanez is, I don't know if it's Andy Ibanez, but that hit double he had against the Astros, that's going to be replayed in Detroit for like the next 20 years. So
yeah, well,
yeah. Anyway, anything else you wanted to talk about with Mets, Phillies, anything that comes to mind before we jump into Saturday?
no, I mean, I think we kind of covered all the bases at least for now. I mean, obviously things are subject to change, but yeah.
Oh, I lost you at the end there for a second.
I said I think we covered it pretty good for now.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think so.
like I said,
sure.
things can change, so we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. So Saturday, 4:08 p.m. My heart's already pounding. I'm excited yet very nervous. Like I just need to see the Phillies up like 2-3-0 on the scoreboard to start to feel a little comfortable and relax a little bit, and to ease the tension right now. But it's I just Mets fans, man. Like if you know me, like I'm never someone who's going to go out of my way to start the trash talk. That's what really frustrates me is like the Mets and the Braves fans go out of their way, all the ones I know, and they start it with me. I'm like, I'm not someone who like, I'm not going to go up to you and brag about it if my team dominates you in the series. Like, if you start it with me, I am going to finish it though. And I want the opportunity to finish it with all these Mets fans on Twitter or wherever that like, they have gotten way too confident and cocky about themselves. They're all Jesse Winker right now. And we need to all make them feel like Pete Alonso did when he tripped over that bat yesterday, that was awesome. I mean, that was freaking hilarious. But make it like Pete Alonso. Like Pete Alonso takes the home run derby seriously. We can't lose this team. Please, let's not do that. So
if you would have asked, if you would have asked a Mets fan about Pete Alonso right before that ninth inning started, they'd have told you to launch him into the sun and never bring him back. Like,
yep, exactly. So
they'll be the first ones to backstab their players when they lose.
Exactly. So we will be here on Saturday at some point talking before the game, talking about the result of the game. We're going to have you guys covered. All the Red October coverage is going to start. I'm going to do my best to try to get a hype video out by Saturday morning, I think will be the goal. So yeah, I'm excited. Tomorrow. I'm just going to take a deep breath, try not to think about it too much until later at night. And then by the time Saturday morning comes, I will be ready. I'm nervous right now, but I'll be ready to go. And I think Drew will be too. Any other thoughts, Drew?
No, I mean, everybody keep an eye out for that hype video because Hunter does an awesome job. So definitely just keep an eye out.
Appreciate it, Drew. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We had a number of people in here. Sorry, we didn't really get to a ton of the comments, but we really appreciate you guys. We will be getting to the comments as the postseason goes on for sure. We just wanted to talk about everything that happened this past week and potential matchup, or not potential matchup, but the matchup now. So, Joel, good to see you in here at the end. Appreciate you tuning in. And thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate y'all. We will talk to you guys on Saturday at some point. Go Phils.
Have a good one.